Snow whispered across the quiet streets of Westchester County as Garrett Hale pulled his Mercedes into the driveway, humming a Christmas tune he didn't even like. His leather gloves still carried the faint perfume of the woman he'd spent the holiday with, Sienna Calder, at a Ritz-Carlton suite miles away from the wife who believed he'd been working overtime. He stepped out of the car with a box wrapped in glossy silver paper, rehearsing the warm, fatherly smile he planned to give Elena, a smile he hadn't earned. The house was dark except for the faint glow of the Christmas tree through the window. Strange. Elena always left the kitchen lights on, especially since her pregnancy made walking in the dark risky. Garrett pushed open the door, ready with his performance. "Elena, honey, I'm home." No answer. His boots echoed across the hardwood floor. The air felt wrong, hollow, too still. A half-folded baby blanket sat on the couch, but everything else looked stripped. He frowned, walked deeper into the house, and stopped when he saw the hallway closet. It gaped open, empty. Elena's coat, the soft tan one her father bought her before he passed, was gone. "Elena?" His voice cracked without meaning to. He crossed the living room, noticing her shoes missing from the rack, her books gone from the shelf. Panic rippled up his spine as he hurried toward the bedroom. The closer he got, the colder the air felt, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Then he saw it. On the neatly made bed sat her wedding ring in a tiny Tiffany box, placed gently on top of a folded note. His heart punched his ribs. Garrett reached for the note, his fingers trembling despite the arrogance he wore like a second skin. "Garrett, I know about Boston. I know about her. And I know what I'm worth now. I'm leaving before you take anything else from me. Elena." The room spun, his throat closed. She knew. She had actually left. He bolted outside, scanning the snowy street, hoping for footprints, headlights, anything. But the snow had already covered her tracks. Desperation clawed at him as he rushed back inside and checked the hallway camera. The screen flickered, then showed a single clip. Elena, 7 months pregnant, carrying a suitcase down the steps, stopping only to press a hand to her belly as if steadying herself. A rideshare car pulled up. She looked back at the house with eyes full of something he hadn't seen in years. Resolve. Then she left. For the first time in his life, Garrett felt the icy punch of fear that comes when a man realizes he has finally pushed too far. He grabbed his phone with shaking hands, dialing her number. It rang once, twice, then went straight to voicemail. "Elena, please. Come home, we can talk. Please." The call ended, and somewhere across New York, Elena Brooks was stepping into a world where Garrett Hale no longer had control, and he had no idea just how much he was about to lose. But the next morning, a single piece of evidence would land in his inbox, shattering the last illusion of safety he had left. Christmas morning should have smelled like cinnamon and hope, but for Elena Brooks, it began with the metallic sting of loneliness. The sun pushed a pale light through the curtains of her Westchester home, glinting off the ornaments she had arranged so carefully, imagining a future where her family would grow, piece by fragile piece. She moved slowly through the kitchen, one hand over her belly, whispering good morning to the tiny life inside her. In another world, Garrett would have come downstairs with a smile, maybe with hot cocoa, maybe with that boyish charm that used to make her heart stir. But in this world, the one she now had to face, he wasn't there. He hadn't been there the night before either, though he'd sworn his Christmas Eve meeting had run late. Her phone buzzed on the counter. For a brief second, she hoped his name would flash across the screen with an apology, a promise, something to cling to. Instead, an automated email notification dinged. She almost ignored it, but the subject line caught her eye. "Your stay at Ritz-Carlton, Boston. Final invoice." Her pulse tripped. Her thumb hesitated before opening it, and then everything inside her broke. There it was. Garrett's company email, tied to a luxury suite, restaurant charges, champagne, room service at hours that made no sense for a man supposedly working all night. Her breath shook. She backed up until her spine hit the pantry door. "No, no, this can't be," she whispered. The baby kicked lightly, as if sensing the shift in her heartbeat. She tried to steady her breath and clicked the next attachment, an image someone on social media had tagged publicly. A wine glass held up for a toast, Sienna's manicured hand in the foreground, and in the reflection of the glass behind her, a blurred silhouette unmistakably Garrett's. She zoomed in. Her chest tightened, his posture, his jawline, his suit. It was him. Everything inside her went utterly still. Then came a strange calm, sharp, cold, terrifying in its clarity. She'd always thought if this day ever came, she would scream, throw something, beg for answers. But there was no room for theatrics when your heart snapped clean down the middle. She simply sat. Elena lowered herself carefully into a chair, pressing her palms to her face. Tears slipped silently through her fingers. She cried for the woman who had spent years believing she could be enough. She cried for the daughter she would soon meet. She cried for the father who had died before he could warn her that some men loved the idea of a family more than the work of keeping one. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Garrett. "Running late. Don't wait up. Love you." Elena stared at the words, hollowed out. That was the moment something inside her shifted. Not anger, not rage, but a slow, deliberate decision. She rose from the chair, wiped her face, and began folding the baby clothes she had laid out the night before. If he could walk away from their life so easily, then so could she. She reached for her suitcase. But before she could zip it closed, an unexpected knock at the front door would change everything. The knock at the door was soft at first, almost hesitant. But in the silence of that Christmas morning, it thundered through the house like a warning. Elena froze, her hand gripping the half-zipped suitcase. For a moment she wondered if Garrett had come home early, if guilt had somehow driven him back. But no, Garrett didn't knock. He walked in. Always. Another knock. Firmer this time. Elena inhaled shakily, wiped the last trace of tears from her cheeks, and shuffled toward the front door. Her steps were slow, careful, as if each one carried the weight of the betrayal she had just uncovered. When she opened the door, she expected cold air, maybe a neighbor offering holiday cookies. She did not expect to see Dr. Mason Reed standing on her porch. He looked completely out of place there, still wearing his navy winter coat, snowflakes collecting in his dark hair, a worn leather messenger bag slung over his shoulder. His eyes, sharp but warm, flickered instantly to her swollen belly, then to her pale face. "Elena, are you okay?" he asked gently. For a moment she couldn't speak. Mason had treated her father through years of heart complications. He'd seen her at her strongest and her weakest, and though he never said it, she always sensed a quiet protectiveness in him, a softness he showed no one else. She stepped aside so he could enter. "Mason, what are you doing here?" she managed. "I was dropping off some paperwork for your father's estate," he said. "I thought Garrett would be home, but his car isn't in the driveway. When I saw your lights on, I wanted to check on you." The mention of Garrett's name stung like ice beneath her skin. Mason's brows tightened. "Elena, what happened?" She tried to answer, but her voice cracked. The emotions she had been holding in, the fear, the disbelief, the loneliness, rose up, threatening to spill over. He guided her to the couch with a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Sit. Breathe." She opened her mouth to tell him everything, but something inside her hesitated. Pride, shame, maybe both. How could she explain that the man she loved had spent Christmas in a luxury suite with another woman? That she was packing her life into a suitcase because she had no idea who she was married to anymore? Her silence told Mason more than words. "Elena," he said softly, "you don't have to pretend with me." A single tear slid down her cheek, then another. And suddenly her control broke. She pressed both hands against her face, trying to contain sobs that had been building for months. Mason pulled her into a steady, grounding embrace, not romantic, not presumptuous, just human and warm, the kind of comfort she hadn't felt in a long time. When she finally pulled away, he looked at the suitcase and exhaled sharply. "You're leaving." She nodded. "Does he know?" "No." Her voice was barely a whisper. Mason leaned back slightly, studying her with something that looked like both admiration and worry. "Then you need a plan. A safe one." Before she could reply, her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen, and her breath caught. It wasn't Garrett. It was an email notification from Garrett's company. Subject line, "Contract misconduct investigation, urgent." Elena felt the room tilt, and in that moment she realized Garrett's betrayal was only the beginning of a much bigger storm heading straight toward her. Elena stared at the glowing subject line on her phone, the words blurring as her pulse hammered in her ears. Contract misconduct investigation, urgent. Her breath caught, and for a moment she felt weightless, as if the ground beneath her had shifted with no warning. Mason leaned forward, worry sharpening his expression. "Elena, what is it?" She handed him the phone with trembling fingers. Mason scanned the text, and his jaw tightened. "This is serious. They're reviewing signatures on a major PR contract, and they're saying Garrett may have falsified authorization." Her stomach dropped. Falsified authorization. She whispered the words as if saying them aloud might make them disappear. But they didn't. They settled into her bones with a coldness that rivaled the winter air outside. "Elena," Mason said carefully, "did you sign anything for him recently? Anything at all?" She shook her head. "No. At least, I don't think so." Then her face paled further. "Wait. Last month, he shoved a stack of papers at me while I was half asleep. He said it was for insurance updates. I didn't read them. I just trusted him." The shame hit her hard. How could she have been so careless, so blind? Mason placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "If he used your signature without consent, or tricked you into signing something tied to illegal PR spending, Elena, you could be named in that investigation." Her world constricted. She pressed a hand to her belly as if shielding her daughter from the panic rising inside her. "But I didn't do anything wrong," she whispered. "I know," Mason said gently, "but corporate investigations don't care about the truth at first. They care about paperwork, and your name on the wrong line could drag you into a mess that belongs to him, not you." A wave of dizziness washed over her. She gripped the arm of the couch, willing herself not to collapse. Leaving Garrett had been hard enough, but now she realized he hadn't just broken her heart. He may have tied her to a scandal that could ruin her future, drain her savings, and endanger her stability at the exact moment she needed it most. "Listen," Mason continued. "You need to get ahead of this. Contact the HR department, explain you're unaware of any contract involvement, request copies of everything with your name on it." I don't even know who to call," she whispered. "I'll help you," he said. "You're not alone in this." His voice was calm, firm, everything she needed but didn't know how to accept. Tears pricked her eyes again, not from heartbreak this time, but from the terror of becoming collateral damage in Garrett's greed. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed again. A second email, this one from a private law office she didn't recognize. Subject line, "Immediate action required. Financial liability notice." Her heart slammed painfully against her ribs. Mason reached for the phone, his face darkening as he read the preview text. "Elena, this looks like they're holding you accountable for a breach." "For what breach?" she whispered. He looked up slowly. "For one, Garrett may have signed in your name." Elena's breath shattered. And in that horrifying instant, she realized leaving Garrett wasn't the end of her nightmare. It was only the first step into a deeper one he had created for her. The room felt smaller with every breath Elena took. The second email still glowed on her phone screen, its legal jargon slicing through her chest like a cold blade. Financial liability notice. It didn't matter that she didn't understand the full scope yet. The tone alone told her the truth. Someone, somewhere, believed she owed something huge, something she never agreed to sign, something Garrett had dragged her into without hesitation. Her pulse thudded unevenly, and she pressed a hand to her belly to calm the flutter of movement inside. The baby reacted to every spike of stress now, every tremor of fear. She hated that Garrett's choices were already hurting her daughter before she'd even taken her first breath. "Elena." Mason knelt beside her, voice low but firm. "You need to tell me everything. Every paper you signed. Every time he asked you to, just trust him. Nothing is too small." She swallowed hard, trying to drag her mind back through the haze of the past few months. "There were insurance updates, a refinancing form for the house, and something he said was a permission slip for hospital access when I give birth." Her hands tightened in her lap. "I signed it because he said we needed it on file." Mason exhaled slowly. "He likely mixed legitimate documents with illicit ones." "He knew you wouldn't question it." The shame twisted inside her, hot and suffocating. How had she let it get this far? How had she convinced herself that blind trust was the same as love? "Elena, look at me." Mason's voice softened. "You are not at fault. A marriage built on manipulation is a trap, not a partnership." But the truth gnawed at her. She had been trapped for far longer than she'd admitted. Garrett had slowly chipped away at her independence, controlling their finances, urging her to quit her part-time job, insisting she didn't need to worry about grown-up paperwork while she was pregnant. She thought it was care. It was control. Her vision blurred, and she blinked until Mason's face came back into focus. "I have to leave today," she whispered. "If an investigation starts, I can't still be in this house. I can't let them think I'm part of this." "Then you won't be," Mason said firmly. "I'll drive you. You shouldn't be alone." She hesitated. Leaving meant more than packing a suitcase. It meant stepping into the unknown, with no job security, no savings, no home lined up except a small guest room offered by a cousin she barely spoke to. It meant risking everything for a future that wasn't guaranteed. But staying meant sacrificing her safety, and her daughter's. Elena stood slowly, steadying herself on the arm of the couch. "Give me 10 minutes." She walked down the hallway, her hand gliding over the wall she once painted with hope. In the bedroom, she added her medical files, ultrasound photos, and her father's old watch to the suitcase. Everything else, the memories, the heartbreak, she left on the bed where her ring had sat just hours before. When she returned to the living room, Mason had already cleaned off the counter and turned off the lights, waiting quietly for her. For the first time that morning, she didn't feel completely alone. They stepped outside into the biting cold. Snowflakes drifted down, soft and silent, settling onto her coat like a fragile promise. As Mason opened the car door for her, her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't an email. It was a text from an unknown number, a picture of her forged signature on a contract worth millions, and beneath it, a message that would turn her blood to ice. "You and Garrett will both answer for this." The car heater hummed softly as Mason pulled out of the driveway, the windshield wipers brushing away steady lines of snow. Elena sat in the passenger seat, hands folded over her belly, staring at the forged signature glowing on her phone. It was her name, but written with the confidence of someone who'd never once doubted he could get away with it. Garrett had copied her handwriting perfectly. Too perfectly. Her chest tightened with a crushing mix of betrayal and humiliation. "Elena," Mason said gently, glancing at her before returning his eyes to the road. "You're breathing too fast. Slow down. In through your nose, out through your mouth." She tried, but her breath kept stuttering. "He stole my name," she whispered. "He stole my trust, and now he's stealing my future. I don't know how to fight something this big." "You're not fighting it alone," Mason replied. "There are legal channels. I know people who can advise you, and we'll get proof of what he did." "You don't have to panic yet." "Yet?" The word lingered like a shadow. Traffic lights reflected across the dashboard as they entered the main road toward Queens. Elena watched the familiar world pass by. The grocery store where she used to buy prenatal vitamins, the diner where she and Garrett shared late breakfasts, the park bench where she once imagined their daughter would take her first steps. It was all slipping away behind her like pieces of a life she no longer recognized. "Do you want to call your cousin?" Mason asked. "Give her a heads up that we're coming?" Elena shook her head. "No, she doesn't even like Garrett. She'll ask questions I'm not ready to answer." Her voice softened. "I just need a place to breathe." Mason nodded. "You'll have that." Silence settled between them, heavy but strangely comforting. The car turned onto the Queensboro Bridge, city lights spreading like a constellation across the skyline. Elena pressed her palm to the cold window, watching the reflection of herself. Pale, exhausted, scared. A version of her she wished she didn't have to meet. "Can I ask you something?" she said quietly. "Anything?" "Did you know about Garrett, about who he really was?" Mason hesitated only a second. "I suspected. The way he talked to you, the way he made decisions for you. But I didn't know it was this bad. If I had, I would have stepped in sooner." A soft, bitter laugh escaped her. "You couldn't have. I wouldn't have believed you." "That's what happens when you love someone," he said gently. "You give them the benefit of the doubt until it hurts." A tear slid down her cheek and she didn't bother wiping it. They pulled up to the curb outside her cousin Mariana's apartment building. The lobby lights glowed warm through the glass, a stark contrast to the freezing air outside. "Elena," Mason said, turning off the engine, "before you go in, you need to know something." She looked at him, heart thudding. "That contract investigation, if they push it to federal review, they won't just question Garrett." Mason's voice lowered. "They'll question you, and if they believe you were complicit, even unintentionally, you could face charges." Her blood ran cold. "But we can stop this," Mason added quickly, "if we move fast." Before she could respond, her phone buzzed again. A new message. From Garrett. 4 words that made her entire body go numb. "We need to talk. Now." And as she stared at the screen, a black SUV rolled slowly to a stop across the street, watching her, waiting. Elena froze on the sidewalk, one hand instinctively covering her belly as the black SUV idled across the street. Its windows were tinted so dark they swallowed the streetlights, but she felt eyes on her, heavy, deliberate, assessing. Mason noticed it too. His posture shifted, protective, tense. "That car, has it been following you?" he asked. I don't know." Her voice trembled. "I didn't see it before." The SUV's engine hummed low, as if waiting for a signal. Then her phone buzzed again. "Garrett, don't go inside. Stay where you are. I'm coming." Panic flared through her. If he already knew she'd left, what else did he know? Had he seen the emails, The forged signature? Did he think she was going to expose him? Elena. Mason stepped closer. You don't have to talk to him, not now, not while you're in danger or stressed. But what if this is about the investigation? She whispered. What if he thinks I'm responsible? What if they're trying to blame me for everything? Mason lowered his voice, controlled and steady. That SUV isn't from the company. If they were conducting an official investigation, they wouldn't trail you in an unmarked car. This is something else. Her heart pounded so hard she could barely breathe. The passenger window of the SUV cracked open, just an inch, enough to make her blood run cold. Mason moved in front of her, blocking their line of sight. Get inside the building, he murmured. Now, slowly. She clutched her suitcase and took a step toward the door, but her legs shook with every movement. A sudden gust of wind swept through the street, rattling a metal sign and making her jump. The SUV responded instantly, creeping forward a few feet. Mason, her voice was barely a whisper. I know, he said. It's intentional. They're trying to spook you. They reached the lobby doors. Mason pulled one open with his free hand. Go! I'll be right behind you. But before she could step through, her phone rang. Garrett. Her breath caught. She answered only because fear of liability, of the investigation, of the unknown SUV cornered her. His voice came fast, frantic, shaking. Elena, where are you? Don't talk to anyone. Don't sign anything. I can fix this. Fix this? Mason said I could be dragged into your case, she said, voice trembling with both fear and anger. My name is on a contract worth millions, Garrett. Do you understand what that means for me? He exhaled sharply, almost a gasp. I didn't mean for you to get pulled into this. I only needed a signature for internal approval, just a formality. This wasn't supposed to happen. You forged my name, she whispered. A beat of silence, heavy, damning. Elena, Garrett said finally, voice low and urgent. You don't understand. If this investigation goes federal, we're both screwed. And the people behind that deal, they're not the kind you walk away from. Her stomach dropped. What people? Before he could answer, the SUV door cracked open. A boot stepped onto the pavement. Mason yanked Elena inside the building just as the lobby doors locked behind them. Garrett shouted through the phone, voice breaking, Elena, run! Don't let them find you! And as the SUV's engine roared, Elena realized this wasn't just infidelity or fraud anymore. She was running from something far more dangerous. The lobby doors clicked shut behind them, sealing out the cold and the danger lurking in the SUV. Elena's breath fogged the glass as she watched the car idle for several seconds before rolling slowly down the block. Not leaving, just repositioning. They're not done, Mason murmured, guiding her deeper into the lobby. We need to get upstairs, now. Her legs wobbled as they boarded the elevator. She clutched the railing, trying to slow her breathing. The metal walls mirrored her fear, her pale face, the way her belly rose and fell with every tremor. Mason, she swallowed hard. What did Garrett mean when he said, those people aren't the kind you walk away from? Mason hesitated, long enough that the silence became an answer of its own. When the elevator doors opened, he stepped out first, scanning the hallway before motioning her forward. Mariana's spare apartment was small, dimly lit, but warm. It smelled faintly of lavender, the way their grandmother's house used to. Only when he locked the door behind them did he finally speak. Elena, what I'm about to tell you stays between us. She sank onto the couch, heart pounding. Just say it. He sat across from her, elbows resting on his knees. A few years ago at the hospital, I treated an executive who was connected to a private marketing syndicate, people who helped launder PR budgets for corporations. They manipulate public perception for a price. She felt the room tilt slightly. What does that have to do with Garrett? Garrett's department has been under scrutiny for months. There were whispers he was using third-party contracts to move large sums of money under the radar. Mason paused, his voice lowering. If he used your signature, it means he needed a clean name, someone who looked innocent on paper. Her fingers curled into fists. He made me his alibi. Yes. The realization stabbed through her. She was never a partner. She was a shield. Her throat tightened, grief and rage twisting together until she could barely breathe. So I'm not just dealing with cheating or fraud. I'm dealing with criminals. Mason nodded once, heavy, reluctant. And that SUV wasn't random. A knock at the door made Elena jump so violently she cried out. Mason stood instantly, motioning her to stay behind him. But it was only a neighbor, a teenage girl returning Mariana's spare keys. Relief flooded the room in a shaky wave. When the door closed, Elena finally let herself collapse back into the couch cushions. Everything hurt. Her head, her chest, her future. What do I do now? She whispered. You document everything, Mason said. Every email, every contract, every interaction. And tomorrow morning I'll take you to an attorney who specializes in federal cases. But tonight, he softened. Tonight you need to rest. Stress like this isn't safe for your baby. Her hand instinctively covered her belly. Rest. The word felt foreign in a world collapsing around her. As Mason helped her settle into the guest room, her phone buzzed again, so softly she almost missed it. A voicemail from Sienna, the mistress. Elena stared at the screen, dread rising. Mason's voice came from the doorway. Do you want me to play it for you? She shook her head. She pressed play, and Sienna's voice, dripping with fear, not arrogance, filled the tiny room. Elena, they're blaming you for everything. You need to run. The message ended with a scream, and then the line went dead. The voicemail ended, but the echo of Sienna's scream clung to the air like smoke that wouldn't clear. Elena sat frozen on the edge of the guest bed, her phone slipping from her hand onto the comforter. Her heart pounded so violently she could hear the blood rushing in her ears. For a moment she couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't understand how the woman who had helped destroy her marriage was now crying out to her for help. Mason stepped inside the room, reading her face instantly. What did she say? Elena swallowed hard. She told me they're blaming me, and then she screamed. Something happened, something bad. Mason's eyes darkened. He knelt down beside the bed, taking her trembling hands. Elena, listen to me. Whatever is happening to Sienna, you cannot go back to Garrett. You cannot meet anyone connected to that contract. These people protect themselves first, and they will sacrifice anyone. But if she's hurt, you think they'll spare you? His voice cracked with quiet urgency. You're the one with the forged signature. The truth hit her so hard she felt nauseous. She wasn't a witness. She was the scapegoat. And Sienna, once smug and untouchable, had finally realized she wasn't going to be protected either. Tears stung Elena's eyes. I didn't ask for any of this, Mason. I didn't do anything. I know, he said softly. But the people behind that deal don't care who's innocent. She pressed both hands to her face, trying not to sob. The baby shifted beneath her ribs, reminding her she wasn't just fighting for herself. That little heartbeat depended on her staying alive. Her phone buzzed again, another voicemail. This time from Garrett. Mason reached for the phone, shaking his head. Don't. Not tonight. I need to know, Elena whispered. She pressed play before she lost her nerve. Garrett's voice burst through the speaker, frantic, raw, nothing like the man she once knew. Elena, please, listen to me. You're in danger. Sienna wasn't supposed to call you. She panicked. They came to my apartment. They think you leaked something. They think... A crash echoed behind him, followed by Garrett yelling at someone to stop. Elena's stomach twisted. Another voice cut in. Low, cold, unmistakably threatening. "Bring us the girl. Bring us Elena Brooks. She signs, or you both answer for it." The voicemail cut out. Elena's throat tightened until she could barely breathe. Her name. They were saying her name. They weren't trying to silence Garrett. They wanted her. Mason snatched the phone, his expression grim, controlled. "We're leaving this apartment tonight. They know too much. This building isn't secure." "Where do we go?" she whispered. "I know a place upstate," he said. "A colleague owns a cabin, private, off-grid. They won't find you there. It'll buy us time to meet the attorney tomorrow." Elena nodded, wiping her tears. She didn't have the luxury of being scared. Not anymore. They grabbed her suitcase. Mason scanned the hallway before stepping out. The building felt too quiet, too still. Every shadow looked like danger waiting to inhale her. They reached the elevator. Mason hit the button, but when the doors slid open, they weren't empty. Someone was already inside. A man in a black coat, staring directly at Elena. And as he stepped forward, she felt every inch of her world collapse into a single, primal truth. They had found her. The man in the elevator didn't speak. He didn't need to. His stillness was louder than words. He stood with his hands folded in front of him, posture rigid, eyes fixed on Elena with a chilling steadiness that made the air inside the hallway turn razor thin. Mason reacted first. He stepped in front of Elena, shoulders squared, voice low. "Can we help you?" The man's expression didn't change. His gaze flicked briefly to Mason, scanning him like a threat assessment, then returned to Elena. Calm, unblinking, intentional. "Elena Brooks?" he asked. Her pulse spiked. She gripped the handle of her suitcase until her knuckles ached. Mason answered for her. "She's not speaking to anyone. Move." The man didn't. Instead, he raised one hand slowly, like someone showing they weren't armed. But his silence made the gesture more ominous, not less. His coat sleeve shifted, revealing a wristband, black with a chrome emblem. Corporate security, not police, not government, private. "I'm here to escort her," he said calmly, "for her own safety." Mason let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "Right. Step aside. Now." The man's jaw tightened, signaling patience wearing thin. "Ms. Brooks is involved in sensitive proprietary material belonging to Hale Communications. There are protocols." Elena felt the blood drain from her face. "I'm not part of Hale Communications," she whispered. "You signed internal clearance papers," the man replied. "Your signature is tied to an active investigation. You're required to come with us." "No," Mason said immediately. "She isn't going anywhere with you." The man's stare hardened. "If she refuses, my team will escalate." Team. That meant more of them. Maybe outside, maybe in the SUV, maybe closer. Elena staggered back, adrenaline flooding her veins. "I didn't sign anything," she insisted. "My husband forged—" "That is not for you to determine," the man interrupted. "Follow me, and this will be handled quietly." His tone wasn't threatening. It was worse. Professional, practiced, the kind used on people who didn't get to say no. Mason stepped closer, blocking the man completely. "She's pregnant, she's overwhelmed, and she's not setting foot in that elevator." Elena expected the man to argue. Instead, he sighed. "Very well." He reached into his coat. Elena's heart stopped. Mason shoved her backward, instinct overpowering thought. She stumbled into the wall, bracing herself, expecting a weapon. But it wasn't a weapon at all. It was a document envelope, sealed and stamped with corporate insignia. "For Ms. Brooks," he said, extending it toward Mason. "This is your formal notice. If she does not comply within 24 hours, the next contact will not be as civil." He stepped back into the elevator, never breaking eye contact with Elena. The doors closed. Silence swallowed the hallway. Mason exhaled shakily and tore open the envelope, then froze, staring at the papers inside as though they'd burned him. "Mason!" "What is it?" Elena whispered. He looked up, pale. "Elena, they've frozen your bank accounts." Her knees buckled. "And that's not all," Mason added, voice cracking. He handed her the final page, a summons. Her name listed as the primary responsible party, and stamped across the top, Federal Fraud Investigation. Elena's vision blurred as she stared at the federal summons. Her name, her real, innocent name, sat beneath bold accusations she didn't even understand. Fraud, misconduct, authorization abuse. As if she were the mastermind, not the wife too tired and too trusting to question her husband's midnight paperwork. Her knees nearly buckled, but Mason caught her before she hit the floor. "Elena, breathe," he said, his voice steady but tight. "Slow breaths. Look at me." I can't do this," she whispered, chest tightening painfully. "They froze my accounts, Mason. I have nothing. I'm carrying a baby and I have nothing." "You're not alone," he insisted. "We'll fight this." But the words felt thin against the weight crushing her lungs. She imagined herself in a courtroom, lawyers tearing apart her character, the world believing she'd forged millions in contracts while she could barely afford maternity vitamins. Every part of her life, her reputation, her safety, her daughter's future, was unraveling faster than she could hold it together. Her voice cracked. "Why are they doing this to me?" "Because Garrett made you the perfect scapegoat," Mason said quietly. "No corporate ties, no record. No one would question your signature because you're not the type to cause trouble." She pressed her trembling fingers to her temples. "He said he loved me. How could he let this happen?" Mason hesitated, then spoke a truth she wasn't ready for. "Elena, I don't think Garrett ever expected you to find out. Or leave. You changed the script, and now they're scrambling to protect themselves." Tears slid down her cheeks, hot and humiliating. "I just wanted a family, a safe home, a good life for my daughter." "And you will have that," Mason said, kneeling so he could look her in the eyes. "But first we survive this storm." As he helped her into a chair, Elena clutched her stomach. A sharp pain rippled through her side. "Elena!" Mason's head snapped up. "Where does it hurt?" Just a cramp," she breathed. "Stress. I'm okay." But she wasn't. Her entire body felt like it was tightening, bracing. Mason's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his expression shifting instantly from concern to alarm. "What is it?" Elena asked. He showed her the message. It was from an unknown number. "You have 2 hours to bring Elena Brooks to us. After that, we come to you." Elena's breath scraped her throat. "They know your number." "They know a lot more than that," Mason said, his jaw tightening. A sudden pounding on the front door made both of them jump. Not a knock, an attack. Heavy fists, urgent. Someone trying to break through. "Elena!" a voice shouted from the hallway. "Open the door! It's me!" Garrett. Her pulse spiked in terror. Mason moved toward the door, ready to block it, but Elena grabbed his arm. "No," she whispered. "He led them to me. I know he did." Another slam. "Elena, please." "Let me explain. They're coming." The lock rattled violently. "Mason," she whispered, voice trembling. "What do we do?" Before he could answer, the hallway lights flickered, then went out entirely. Darkness swallowed everything. And somewhere in that darkness, footsteps approached the door. Heavy, intentional, not Garrett's. Darkness swallowed the apartment so completely that for a second, Elena couldn't tell if her eyes were open. Her breath hitched as she clutched the armrest of the chair, her other hand protectively covering her belly. The pounding at the door had stopped, but the silence that followed was far worse. It wasn't calm. It was calculated. "Elena, stay behind me," Mason whispered, already moving with controlled precision toward the kitchen drawer where he'd seen Mariana keep a flashlight. But the drawer stuck, squeaking loudly before sliding open. Too loud. Elena winced. Everything felt amplified when you were the hunted. Garrett's voice broke through the dark, frantic and nearly incoherent. "Elena, they cut the power. You have to let me in. Please, they're not here for me anymore. They're here for you." His desperation sent terror through her bloodstream. She had never heard Garrett's voice shake, not once in their years together, not even during arguments or emergencies. But now it trembled, cracked again. Fear had stripped him down to something unrecognizable. Mason found the flashlight and clicked it on. A narrow beam sliced through the darkness, illuminating swirling dust, trembling hands, pale walls, but not the danger lurking outside. "Elena," Mason murmured, "we're not opening that door." Her voice wavered. "But what if he's telling the truth?" "He forged your name on a federal contract," Mason said. "Truth isn't exactly his strong suit." The pounding resumed, harder, more desperate. "Elena, please! They followed me from my building. They think you have the files. I tried to warn you." A thud cut him off, a grunt of pain, something heavy hitting the wall. Then silence. "Mason, what just happened?" Elena's voice was barely audible. Mason didn't answer. He pressed a finger to his lips, turned off the flashlight, and motioned for her to move back toward the guest room. They stood still as statues, listening. Footsteps, slow, measured, coming down the hallway toward their door. Not Garrett's. These steps were heavier, steadier, almost bored. Professionals, not men who ran or panicked, men who finished things. The doorknob jiggled. Elena's heart nearly stopped. Another sound, a faint click, metal meeting metal, someone picking the lock. Mason grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the window. "We can't stay here. They'll break in within seconds." "But we're on the 3rd floor," she whispered. "We can't jump." "We don't have to." He pointed to the fire escape just beyond the window. "Come on." Her stomach cramped again, sharp and terrifying. "Mason, the baby—" "I've got you," he said firmly. "One step at a time. Just breathe." Behind them, the lock clicked louder. The bolts slid. They had seconds. Mason unlocked the window and shoved it upward. Cold winter air rushed in, burning Elena's throat. He helped her step onto the fire escape, gripping her waist carefully, making sure her balance held. Inside the apartment, the front door exploded inward. Men stormed in. Mason pulled Elena down the metal stairs as shouts filled the hallway above them. "Find her!" a voice barked. "She's pregnant! She can't get far!" Her legs trembled. Every step felt like fire. Her breath came in short, panicked gasps. They reached the 2nd-floor landing when the apartment window above them flew open. A figure leaned out. A flashlight beam hit Elena directly in the face. "There she is!" And as boots thundered onto the fire escape above them, Elena realized they weren't running toward safety. They were running out of time. Metal clanged above them as the men thundered onto the fire escape. Every step vibrated through the old structure, sending shivers down the rusted rails. Elena clung to the railing with one hand and to Mason with the other, her breath sharp in the freezing air. She wasn't built to run like this. 7 months pregnant, terrified, carrying a child who kicked in protest at every jolt. Mason looked up, calculating. "They're moving too fast. We need to get off this staircase." "How?" she gasped, gripping her stomach as another cramp twisted through her. I can't jump." "We don't jump," he said. "We cut across." He pointed to a narrow metal landing halfway down. From there, a maintenance ladder extended to the alley. A drop, yes, but not a deadly one. If she could climb down just a few rungs, he could lower her the rest of the way. Above them, a man shouted, "She's on the stairs! Don't let her reach the ground!" A flashlight beam swept over them. Elena flinched, raising an arm to shield her eyes. Mason grabbed her shoulders. "Go! Now! Hold on to the rails and don't look up!" She forced her legs to move, descending one step at a time, breath ragged. The metal grated under her shoes. Each vibration reminded her how close they were to being caught. The voices grew louder. "Move! Move!" "They're almost on top of us," Elena cried. "I know. Don't stop." Her foot slipped on a patch of ice. She would have fallen if Mason hadn't caught her waist, steadying her. "I've got you," he murmured. "Just one more landing." When they reached the small platform, Mason guided her toward the maintenance ladder. The alley below was dim, lit only by a flickering streetlight. Snow fell in thick flakes, blurring her vision. I can't," she said, shaking violently. "I can't climb down." "You don't have to." Mason positioned himself behind her. "Sit on the edge. I'll lower you. Trust me." She hesitated for a fraction of a second, the world tilting with fear, exhaustion, and the weight of everything collapsing around her. Then a hand grabbed the railing above them. A man leaned over the top platform, eyes locking onto hers. His face was shadowed, but his voice was unmistakable. "There you are!" Elena screamed. Mason shoved her toward the ladder. "Now, Elena! Go!" She slid onto the edge, gripping the cold metal so tightly her fingers burned. Mason braced himself, lowering her inch by inch. Her boots found the first rung, then the second. The men above descended with terrifying speed. "Hurry!" Mason urged. "Don't look up!" But she did. And she saw a man reach for Mason, saw Mason twist, block, push back, saw one of the attackers slip on the ice but grab the railing again like a predator catching balance. "Mason!" she yelled. He turned his head just long enough to meet her eyes. "Climb down! I'll be right behind you!" "No! Please!" Another attacker lunged. A struggle exploded, fists, elbows, metal slamming against metal. The fire escape shook violently. Elena clung to the ladder as the structure groaned under the weight of chaos above her. Then came a sound that tore her heart open. A shout, a slip, a body losing balance. "Mason!" Elena cried out, voice breaking into a sob. Something heavy fell past her, fast, striking the snow below with a sickening thud. And as she stared down in horror, she couldn't tell if it was Mason or one of the men sent to capture her. The scream tore from Elena's throat before she could stop it. The falling body disappeared into the blur of snow below, swallowed by darkness. Every instinct in her begged her to climb back up, to reach for Mason, to make sure he was alive. But her hand slipped on the cold metal rung, and another stabbing pain pulsed through her stomach, a sharp warning that her baby felt every ounce of her terror. "Mason!" she cried again, voice cracking painfully. Above her, the fire escape shook as the men regained their footing. One growled, "Don't let her get away!" Metal clanged as they rushed downward. Elena forced herself to move, one rung at a time, slow, unsteady, terrified. Her boots hit the snow-covered alley faster than she expected. The body lay only a few feet away, sprawled motionless in the white slush. Snow collected around the head and shoulders. Too still, too quiet. Her breath trembled as she stepped closer. Please don't be Mason. Please don't be him. Her vision blurred as she knelt beside the fallen figure. Her hands shook violently as she brushed snow away from the coat collar, revealing a stranger, one of the men. Her knees buckled with relief, so intense it stole what little breath she had left. She pressed a hand to her chest, tears blurring the world. But that relief shattered the moment she heard another groan nearby, a familiar one. "Mason," she whispered. A few feet away, half hidden behind a trash bin, Mason struggled to push himself upright. His breath was ragged, one hand clutching his side where blood darkened his shirt. Don't, don't touch me. He winced as she rushed toward him. I'm not dying. Just fell harder than I planned. Her sob caught in her throat. You scared me. I thought... I know, he said softly, forcing a tight smile. But you need to keep moving. They're coming! Footsteps thundered down the fire escape above them. Elena helped him to his feet, her hands shaking. Can you walk? I can run, he forced out. Come on! They stumbled through the alley, snow falling heavier now, masking their trail but slowing their pace. The wind sliced through Elena's coat, stinging her skin, but adrenaline pushed her forward. Behind them, the men shouted, She's in the alley! Go! Mason grabbed her hand. Left! They turned the corner just as another wave of pain hit Elena's abdomen. She gasped, stopping in her tracks. Elena? Mason steadied her. Is it the baby? I don't know, she cried. It hurts. He pressed a hand to her back. Deep breaths. Just stay with me. But her breaths came out sharp, uneven, as though her lungs were folding in on themselves. The men's footsteps drew closer. Elena, listen, Mason whispered. There's a subway entrance across the street. If we can make it there, we can disappear in the tunnels. She nodded, swallowing the panic. They reached the crosswalk when a blinding pair of headlights swung toward them. A black sedan skidded to a stop, blocking their path. Tires screeched. A door slammed open. A man stepped out. Not a thug. Not corporate security. Garrett. His face was bruised, frantic, desperate. Snow clung to his hair and lashes. His eyes locked onto Elena as if nothing else in the world existed. Elena? Get in the car, he gasped. Now, please. She froze. Mason stepped in front of her. She's not going anywhere with you. Garrett didn't blink. I'm not here to take her back, he said, voice shaking. I'm here to save her. And as the men rounded the corner behind them, Elena realized she had seconds to choose who she trusted. Not forever, but for survival. For one suspended moment, the world narrowed to 3 figures in a storm of falling snow. Elena trembling, Mason bleeding, and Garrett standing before them like a ghost dragged out of the past. His breath fogged in desperate bursts, chest heaving as if he had run miles. The bruise on his cheekbone, the rip in his coat, the terror in his eyes. None of it matched the arrogant man who once strutted through Manhattan boardrooms. He looked hunted, cornered, broken. Elena, get in the car, Garrett repeated, voice cracking. They're not after me anymore. They're after you. I can explain everything, but we have to go. Now. Mason stepped forward, shielding her. You come anywhere near her and I swear... Garrett cut him off, shaking his head violently. You don't understand. I didn't send them. I tried to stop them. They think she has the files that can expose the whole operation. He looked at Elena, his face contorting in pain. They think you're the leak. Elena's breath hitched. What files? I don't have anything. They don't believe that, Garrett said. Someone inside the company told them you took copies. They're panicking. And when they panic, people disappear. The snow seemed to freeze mid-air. Why would they think I took anything? She whispered. Garrett swallowed. Because your name was already on the contracts. His voice softened, guilt seeping into every syllable. Elena, I swear I didn't think it would escalate. I just needed a clean signature, something untraceable. I never meant for you to be pulled into the investigation. Mason exhaled sharply. You forged her name and now act shocked she's the one being hunted? You destroyed her life. I know, Garrett said, almost choking on the admission. I know I did, and I will pay for it. But right now that doesn't matter. Saving her does. Behind them, men's voices echoed through the alley. Closer. Faster. We're out of time, Mason said. Elena, we need to move. Garrett stepped closer, palms raised in surrender. You can hate me for the rest of your life. You can divorce me tomorrow. But right now you have to trust me. If those men catch you, your pregnancy won't matter. Nothing will. Her heart pounded against her ribs. Trust him? The man who'd broken her vows, her safety, her future? But Mason was bleeding. They had no plan, and she couldn't outrun trained men with guns. "Elena," Mason whispered, gripping her arm. "Whatever you choose, I'm with you." Her throat tightened painfully. 3 months ago, she would have followed Garrett anywhere. 3 hours ago, she would have run into Mason's protection without question. Now neither choice felt safe. A shout cut through the alley. "There! They're at the corner!" Garrett panicked. "Elena, choose! Now!" Cold air knifed through her lungs as she looked between the two men. Her past in one direction, her uncertain future in the other. But her daughter kicked hard, and instinct made the decision for her. "Mason," she whispered, "help me." Before she could finish, a bullet struck the pavement inches from her feet, spraying snow into the air, and as the gunshot echoed through Queens, Elena knew her choice. Whoever it was might determine whether she lived to see her child born. The gunshot ricocheted through the alley, exploding in Elena's ears. Instinct took over. She stumbled backward, her hands flying protectively to her belly. Snow erupted around her feet as the bullet splintered the concrete. Mason lunged, pulling her behind a parked dumpster as Garrett dove for cover near his car. "Stay down!" Mason shouted, shielding her with his body. Her heart hammered against her ribs so violently she thought it might burst. The baby jolted inside her, startled by the chaos. Elena couldn't breathe, couldn't focus, couldn't comprehend how her life had spiraled into gunfire in a Queens alley at midnight. A second bullet whizzed past, close enough to rip fabric off Garrett's sleeve. He cursed, ducking lower. "We don't have much time. They're triangulating our position." Mason pulled Elena's face toward his. His eyes, steady despite the panic, locked onto hers. "Elena, listen to me. In 10 seconds, we run to the sedan. Not before, not after. I'll cover you." Garrett interjected, breathless. "My car is bulletproof. They won't shoot through it. Just get in and lock the doors." Elena swallowed hard. Her lungs burned. Her legs shook. But she nodded. She had to survive. She had to protect her child. Mason peeked around the dumpster, his jaw clenched. "They're closing in. 2 from the right, 1 behind the alley entrance." "3?" Garrett hissed. No, there were only 2 when they chased me. That means—" A voice echoed, crisp and cold. "Bring us the girl!" Elena's blood froze. She recognized that voice. It was the same one from Garrett's voicemail. A leader, someone higher than the men chasing them. Mason grabbed her hand, his grip firm and grounding. "It's time. On my count. 3, 2, 1, go!" They sprinted. Elena's legs screamed in pain as she pushed through the snow, every step sending a shock up her spine. Mason ran beside her, slightly ahead, creating a barrier. Garrett rushed to unlock the sedan, fumbling with the keys, yelling, "Come on! Come on! Come on!" Another shot rang out. A shard of metal flew off a nearby trash can, whizzing past Elena's shoulder. She stumbled, nearly falling. Mason grabbed her arm to keep her upright. "Faster, Elena!" he urged. "We're almost there." Her breath tore from her throat. Her vision swam, but she forced her legs to keep moving. Garrett yanked open the back door. "Get in!" Elena collapsed into the seat, pulling herself across the leather. Mason jumped in after her, slamming the door. Garrett dove into the driver's seat. Before the attackers could fire again, Garrett slammed his foot on the gas. The sedan roared forward, snow sprayed, tires screeched, the car fishtailed, then shot down the street as shouts echoed behind them. Elena clung to the seatbelt, her entire body shaking. Her throat tightened, not just from fear, but from overwhelming nausea. "Mason, I don't feel good," she whispered. "I know," he said, checking her pulse. "Just breathe." But she couldn't breathe. A stabbing pain shot through her abdomen, sharp, deep, wrong. Elena gasped. "Something's happening, the baby—" Garrett glanced at her in the rearview mirror, panic overtaking his features. No, no, not now! Elena, hold on! Her vision blurred. Warm liquid soaked through her jeans. Oh, God, she whispered. I think I'm bleeding. Mason's face went white. Garrett, drive to the nearest hospital, now! Garrett swerved onto the main road, accelerating through red lights. Elena, Mason said, gripping her hands tightly. Stay awake. Stay with me. Look at me. Don't close your eyes. But Elena's head tilted back as dizziness overtook her. Her breaths grew shallow, and then she whispered, barely audible, I don't want to die. Before either man could answer, the car lurched violently, slammed from the side by a vehicle that appeared out of nowhere. The impact hit like a bomb. Metal screamed against metal as the sedan spun across the icy road, the world outside turning into a blur of headlights and snow. Elena's body jerked sideways, her seatbelt digging brutally into her ribs. Mason threw an arm across her instinctively, bracing her as the car whipped around and slammed to a stop against a streetlight. For a moment, silence swallowed everything. No voices, no gunshots, just the hiss of the engine and the howl of winter wind tearing through the cracked window. Elena! Elena! Mason's voice was hoarse, desperate. She blinked slowly, vision fuzzy, her breath shallow and uneven. Pain clawed through her abdomen like a tightening fist. Warmth spread beneath her, too warm, too fast. I'm bleeding, she whispered. Garrett cursed violently and kicked the driver's door open. The metal bent, resisting him, but he forced it with a frantic strength born from terror. Snow swirled into the cabin. Stay with us, Elena, he yelled, running to the back door. The hospital's only a few blocks. She can't lose this much blood. Mason gently touched Elena's forehead. Her pulse is dropping. We need pressure on the bleeding. Garrett, grab the emergency kit. But Garrett wasn't listening. He was staring down the road, eyes widening. A black SUV, the same one from earlier, crawling toward them through the snow. They found us, Garrett whispered, voice hollow with dread. Mason snapped his head toward the approaching vehicle. Get Elena out, now. We can't stay in the car. Pain surged through her again, a deep, tearing ache that made her cry out. Mason scooped his arm around her shoulders, lifting her carefully but urgently. Easy, Elena, easy. I've got you. Her head fell against his chest. His heartbeat thundered beneath her cheek, fierce, steady, alive. She clung to that rhythm because everything else felt like it was slipping away. Garrett rushed to help, but Mason shot him a look sharp enough to cut through the freezing air. Don't touch her unless I tell you. Garrett flinched, not from the words, but from the truth in them. He had lost the right to be her protector long ago. The SUV rolled to a stop 20 feet away. Its doors opened. 3 men stepped out. No shouting this time, no running, just cold certainty as they moved toward them. Mason gripped Elena tighter. We need cover! That alley! Go! Garrett nodded, surprisingly quick, surprisingly focused. He guided Mason toward a narrow passage between 2 closed shops. Their feet slipped on ice, breath coming out in sharp clouds. Elena struggled to stay conscious. The world dimmed at the edges like a camera lens closing in. She heard Mason's voice but couldn't make out the words. She heard Garrett muttering, almost praying. She heard the crunch of boots behind them, steady, hunting, merciless. Then, a sharp whistle cut through the air, not from the men, from above. Garrett looked up and froze. Elena, Mason, look! Mason turned just in time to see a figure leaning out of a second-story window, aiming something at the men in pursuit. Not a gun, a flare launcher. A streak of blinding red light shot across the sky, illuminating the entire block. The men shielded their faces, and the figure shouted down, Elena Brooks, this way! And as the flare cast the alley in blood-red light, Elena realized someone unexpected had been watching, and they had just revealed themselves as her unlikely savior. The flare lit the sky like a red sun, scattering shadows and exposing every terrified breath in the alley. Elena blinked against the brightness, her vision flickering between consciousness and darkness. Mason held her upright while Garrett shielded them both, staring upward in disbelief. The figure leaning out of the window wasn't masked, wasn't a hired gun. It was Sienna. Her hair was wild, her makeup smudged, her expression nothing like the polished influencer who once flaunted Garrett on her arm. She looked terrified, haunted, even as she signaled frantically. "Get inside, now!" she shouted. Garrett's face twisted with confusion. "Sienna? How the hell?" But they didn't have time to question anything. The men regrouped below, shouting orders after the flare's light began to fade. Mason tightened his grip on Elena, who winced as another wave of pain seized her abdomen. "We have to move. She bought us seconds, not minutes." Garrett ran ahead to check the alley's end. "It's blocked. Dead end. Our only option is through her." The decision was instant. Mason lifted Elena into his arms, and they sprinted toward the building entrance. Garrett pounded on the metal door beneath Sienna's window. "Open it!" The lock clacked. Then the door swung open violently. Sienna grabbed Garrett's arm, yanking him inside, then pulled Mason and Elena through before slamming it shut. She twisted the locks, her hands trembling so badly she could barely turn the final bolt. Heavy footsteps pounded past the alley outside. For one suspended moment, the building held its breath. Only when the last echo faded did Sienna finally turn around. Her eyes landed on Elena. "All this time," she whispered, voice breaking, "I thought you were the threat. I thought they'd protect me because I was on their side." A hysterical laugh bubbled out of her, sharp, broken. "I was so wrong!" Elena leaned against the wall, struggling to steady her breath, her vision blurred around the edges again. Why are you helping us?" Sienna's expression crumpled. "Because they don't need me anymore. They don't care who they ruin. And because—" Her gaze softened in a way Elena never expected. "You didn't deserve any of this." Garrett stepped forward, anger and betrayal twisting his features. "You told them Elena had the files, didn't you? You started this." "I didn't know what they were planning," Sienna shot back, eyes brimming with tears. "They told me it was just leverage. They said it wouldn't touch her. Then they came to my apartment, tore it apart, screamed at me." She choked on her words. Mason interrupted, voice firm. "This isn't the time. We need to get Elena to a hospital." At that moment, Elena cried out, her body folding inward as pain ripped through her. Mason knelt instantly. "Her contractions are worsening, and the bleeding. This is bad, really bad." Sienna looked horrified. "The nearest hospital is 8 blocks. They'll catch you before you get halfway." Garrett clenched his jaw. "Then we don't go by foot." Sienna hesitated, then pointed to a back staircase. "There's a service garage. I know a way to get a vehicle out without them seeing." Elena's eyes fluttered. The world dimmed. Mason cupped her face. "Stay with me. Elena, look at me. We're taking you somewhere safe." Her breath hitched. "The baby. Something's wrong." Sienna grabbed a jacket and keys with trembling hands. "Then we move now, before they circle back." Garrett opened the stairwell door. Mason stood, lifting Elena carefully. They began down the dim staircase. But halfway down, Elena heard something. Another set of footsteps, coming from below them, fast, confident, closing in. And as a shadow stretched up the wall toward them, Elena realized the men hadn't lost them at all. Someone was already waiting inside the building. The stairwell lights flickered as footsteps echoed upward, steady, confident, chillingly unhurried. Mason froze mid-step, tightening his grip on Elena. Garrett turned pale, glancing down the staircase as if seeing a ghost. Sienna pressed herself against the railing, whispering a curse under her breath. "Who is that?" Mason murmured, voice barely audible. Garrett swallowed hard. If it's who I think it is, we're in more danger than I thought. The footsteps grew louder, boots striking concrete rhythmically, each one a countdown. Elena's pulse hammered in her ears, her vision swimming again. The pain in her abdomen sharpened, twisting violently. She gasped, nearly slipping from Mason's arms. "Hold on, Elena," Mason whispered urgently. "Just a little longer." But the man below had already reached the last corner of the stairwell. A tall figure emerged into view. His suit was immaculate despite the snow outside, his coat tailored and pressed, his expression disturbingly calm. Dark hair slicked back, eyes sharp as glass. He carried no visible weapon, yet his presence alone radiated authority so cold it made the air feel heavier. Garrett stumbled backward. "Mr. Blackwell?" Sienna's face drained of color. "No, not him. Not now." Elena blinked through her dizziness. Who is he?" Garrett's voice shook. "The head of the Syndicate's enforcement division. The one who makes problems disappear." Blackwell lifted his gaze, meeting Elena's eyes with eerie precision. Then, slowly, almost politely, he spoke. "Mrs. Brooks, you've caused quite the disruption tonight." Every muscle in Elena's body tensed. "I didn't do anything," she whispered. Blackwell tilted his head, studying her. "Intentions don't matter. Outcomes do, and the outcome, I'm afraid, is unacceptable." Mason stepped protectively in front of her. "She's pregnant. She needs a hospital, not threats." Blackwell's expression didn't shift. "Her condition is regrettable but irrelevant. She carries information, knowingly or not, that endangers significant interests." Garrett tried to speak, his voice cracking. "Blackwell, please. She doesn't have anything. I swear. I forged her name. She didn't know." Blackwell smiled, a subtle, chilling gesture. "Mr. Hale, you misunderstand. I am not here to punish her for the contract. I am here to retrieve something you lost control of." He took a single step upward. Mason's jaw clenched. He shifted his stance, readying himself even though he knew he stood no chance in a physical confrontation. "You're not taking her." Blackwell's eyes hardened. "You are not in a position to decide." The stairwell suddenly felt too small, too airless. Elena's head spun. She could feel the blood loss deepening, her limbs growing weaker by the second. Garrett looked between them, panic rising like a tide. Desperation overtook his expression, more terrified than guilty, more human than she'd seen him in years. "Blackwell, please," Garrett begged. "Take me instead. Leave her alone. She's innocent." Blackwell didn't even bother looking at him. "You are no longer useful." He took another step. Mason braced himself. Sienna covered her mouth, trembling uncontrollably, and Elena, barely conscious, felt her vision go dark around the edges. Then, a voice rang out from above. "Hey! Step away from her!" Another figure burst into the stairwell, feet pounding down the steps. Not an attacker, not Garrett, not Mason. A uniform, blue, with a badge, an NYPD officer. And as the officer leveled his weapon at Blackwell, the stairwell exploded into chaos, saving Elena's life for one heartbeat longer. The stairwell erupted into chaos the moment the NYPD officer shouted. Blackwell didn't flinch. He merely lifted his chin, calculating. Mason shielded Elena as she sagged against him, her breaths shallow, each one a battle. Sienna clung to the railing, trembling, eyes wide with terror. Garrett pressed himself against the wall, shock freezing him in place. "Hands where I can see them," the officer barked, weapon steady. Blackwell's cold eyes flicked upward. "Officer, this is a private matter." "You're trespassing," the officer snapped, "and you're threatening civilians. Step away from the woman, now." Blackwell's smile never touched his eyes. "Civilians, interesting choice of words." The officer's voice sharpened. "I won't say it again." For the first time, Blackwell paused, not out of fear, but out of calculation. He assessed the angles, the exits, the presence of witnesses, and then he stepped back slowly, raising his hands. But even retreating, he radiated danger. "This isn't over," he murmured. "It is for tonight," the officer replied. Mason exhaled shakily and tightened his hold on Elena. Her head rolled to the side, eyelids fluttering. "Mason," she whispered, voice faint. "I can't breathe." He cupped her face. "Stay with me. We're almost out." Garrett finally snapped out of his frozen shock. "She's hemorrhaging. If we don't get her to the hospital now—" "We're going," Mason said. "Officer, we need your help. She's in labor and she's losing a lot of blood." The officer nodded sharply. "My cruiser's outside. Let's move." As they climbed the stairs with Elena in Mason's arms, Blackwell watched with chilling stillness. Sienna kept her distance from him, shrinking backward into a corner, refusing to meet his gaze. When they emerged onto the street, the flare's smoke was fading from the sky. Snow continued to fall, covering the sedan wreck, the chaos, the shattered pieces of the night. The officer opened the cruiser door. "Put her in the back. She'll be stable there until we reach the hospital." Mason placed her gently onto the seat. Garrett knelt beside her, gripping her hand with trembling fingers. His voice cracked. "Elena, I know you hate me, but please don't leave. Not like this, not tonight." Her eyes opened weakly, the world blurring around the edges. "I'm not dying," she whispered. "Not after everything." Mason climbed in beside her, holding pressure on her abdomen. "Good. Stay with us. Stay right here." The officer sped through the snow-slick streets, sirens wailing. Elena drifted in and out of consciousness, caught between pain and the rhythmic hum of the engine. At the hospital doors, a team rushed out. Nurses lifted her onto a gurney and sprinted toward the emergency entrance. Mason ran beside them. Garrett followed until a nurse blocked him. "Family only," she said sternly. Garrett's voice broke. "I'm her husband." The nurse hesitated, but Mason stepped forward, his voice steady, unwavering. "She wants me with her." Garrett froze. For the first time, he understood. He had lost her, not because of infidelity, not because of fear, but because when the world fell apart, Elena reached for the man who protected her, not the man who betrayed her. Hours later, just before dawn, a baby's cry echoed through the maternity wing. A girl, healthy, safe. Elena held her daughter with tears slipping down her cheeks, tears of survival, of rebirth, of freedom. Mason sat at her bedside, exhausted but smiling, his hand gently brushing her hair. "You did it," he whispered. "You both made it." Outside the room, Garrett stood watching through the glass wall, alone, broken, and facing federal consequences for every crime he'd tried to bury. Blackwell and his men were arrested hours later thanks to Sienna's full confession. The investigation cleared Elena completely. Justice had come. Truth had come. And for the first time in years, peace finally came too. Elena looked at her daughter, her new beginning. Her voice trembled with gratitude. "We're free now." "All right, my wonderful friends. If you're still here with me at this very moment, it means something in Elena's journey has touched your heart in a way that words alone rarely do. And maybe, just maybe, it reminds you of a truth many of us forget. We survive more than we think we can, and we grow in places where we once thought we'd break. This story isn't just about danger or betrayal. It's about courage. It's about a woman who finally remembered her worth. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Elena found hers the hard way, but she found it. And that's what healing looks like in real life. Not perfect, not simple, but possible. So if you're listening to this right now, maybe life is whispering something to you too. You deserve safety. You deserve peace. You deserve a future built on truth, not fear. Thank you for staying with the story until the very end. Really, it means more than you know. If this journey moved you, even a little, please like, share, and subscribe so these stories can reach more hearts searching for courage, hope, and a reminder that they're not alone. We'll meet again in the next story, my friend.